Everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric in our long-running series, the Unported Playlist, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. Today we got a fun prototype from Atari, and that is 10th Degree. It's a 3D fighting game that was never finished, and you can definitely tell. Before we get too far involved, then do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell. It definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But you'll see here on the character select screen, we have a decent character roster to be had, and there's very little known about this game, but if you believe the internet, this was made by ex-Capcom developers, and I kind of see that because it has a little bit of a Street Fighter EX vibe. Definitely not as good, but it does have some of those touches. But right off the top in the first stage, you can definitely tell this game is not finished, but the nice thing is, what is here is competent. There's plenty of moves to be pulled off. Unfortunately, there is no moveset online, so you gotta kind of figure out what you're doing yourself. But the actual fighting game mechanics do function and work, and that's the great thing. Sometimes with a prototype, fighting game, there's not that many moves put into it, so you can't really see too much. It's a little bit of a bummer that the backgrounds aren't that exciting. It's hard to say if they were just finished with the backgrounds and they weren't that great, or if they just hadn't finished fully populating them, because you'll see every once in a while a tumbleweed going by, and that is about as good of a visual indication of how interesting this stage is as there ever was one. But I did win the first match raise here, and you will see that there are some polygons missing from the model. Now it's hard to say, this is emulating in MAME, and that's impressive that it works, but how much of this graphical issue is down to improper emulation, and how much of it is down to just the models not being finished? We kind of have to take a guess, and I'm assuming it's down to the emulation and not that the models aren't complete. But the good thing is emulation doesn't affect the gameplay whatsoever, and it is relatively fun. You'll see that there's a mashing icon there, and you can try to mash through special attacks, but it doesn't really seem to do much, so I'm assuming it's not programmed in there. And I've never been able to pull off a special attack with any of my characters that I played as, so I'm wondering if they're just enabled for the CPU. This would have been on arcade floors as a location test. They would have gotten feedback from players to see what was going on, and maybe the feedback was just not that good, and Atari decided that they couldn't compete, because back in the day, when games hit big in arcades, everyone wanted their own version of it. When Street Fighter 2 hit big, everyone tried to make a Street Fighter 2 clone. When Mortal Kombat hit it big, everyone wanted their own Mortal Kombat game. And when things like Tekken got huge, everyone wanted to make a 3D fighting game. And that's what 10th Degree seems to be emulating here. It's like Tekken and Street Fighter EX had a baby. The good thing is that this game moves relatively fast. It seems like the frame rate is unlocked, and sometimes it moves, I think, maybe too fast, but the response is fluid and there's no lag in the controls that I can tell whatsoever. So if you do want to play this game and check it out to see what it's all about from a historical standpoint, you're going to have a really good time as far as the controls are concerned, and that's always awesome. And I do like the stage here with the spotlight going back and forth and those 2D sprites that are the audience cheering everything on. It is a fun and nice look. It's not the most beautiful looking game ever, that's for sure, but the models have enough polygons to look lifelike, and this was based on Atari's PC-based hardware, so you could expect, comparable performance to what was on the computer market at home at that point in time. And I've lost another match there to a KO. But moving on to another character, Mengu here, I think that's how you pronounce it. Depending on who you pick, you'll either like the character or you won't, but there is somebody for everybody in this game, and that is awesome. You can definitely pick and choose your character, and some of them have some really good art styles, and you're going to see some maybe 50% Street Fighter vibes. It definitely feels like if this was made by ex-Capcom developers, they were using a lot of the theming from Street Fighter to play around with. But this game does have a soundtrack, and it does have sound effects. I swear some of them are borrowed from San Francisco Rush because it is temporary. But go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds, and I'll come back and talk more about the history of 10th Degree. But enjoy! I mean, that's definitely generic East Asian soundtrack right there, but I don't know if you heard it, but that's definitely part of the Rush sound effect from San Francisco Rush. But if you heard anything else in there, leave me a comment down below and tell me where you think it's from, because I know Atari was using assets from older games on the sound effect side to get 10th Degree up and running for a test. But We gotta talk about how amazing it is that this game actually exists. This is a prototype. It was dumped by somebody and made to run in MAME. And not every single arcade game ever released. There's tons of prototypes known about and not known about. Some are known about and undumped, and some are dumped. And that's the great thing about gaming preservation. And when I find prototypes, I dump them and share them with the community so more people can experience this. You'll see here that the power has been unleashed. I have no idea what that means whatsoever, but our character is now glowing red, and it looks like a decent pseudo real-time lighting effect. Like I said, the backgrounds are so bright. This game is incredibly bright that I would have assumed and hoped that the developers and art directors are going to add some more shading and a little bit more contrasty dynamic lighting to the game, because this just doesn't really have all that much of a vibe. And you can see those textures in the background look like classic Atari. Kind of feels like maybe some of those trees were even ripped straight from San Francisco Rush. But moving on to another stage here, Jagger versus Phi Hung. This is another weird environment, and I would hope that this is not finalized. It looks like it's just temporary placeholder art, but if they had actually decided to release this, I would be relatively disappointed in their effort, because they could have done a lot better of a job. That's the thing about talking about prototype video games. You're never quite sure what is just janky because that's what they thought was good, and what is janky because they just didn't finish. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that this is probably just unfinished. But I do like the fighting mechanics. Nothing really quite makes sense because there is no move list whatsoever, but it does function. You have counters, you have fall recoveries, you can try to mash out of different grabs. It's a ton of fun for what is here. Now, I don't know if they were planning on ring outs, because it seems like every match, or most of them, happen in arenas where you could technically fall off to the side, but it never actually happened, so I'm really not sure what was the intent behind what was going on here. Let's pick a different character to see what's going on, and Mickey here. I love the characters as far as their motion are concerned. You have those light characters, the medium characters, and the heavy characters, and they all have a unique move set. Now, if this released, I think it may have found some sort of audience, but honestly, not enough, and the cancellation of this game was probably well warranted. It's unfortunate it happened, as I wish all video games were never canceled so we could at least experience them. But it's fun to play all the same, and it's rare that I feature prototypes on unported playlists, but this is one I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and a few people asked if I was ever going to cover it, and I said maybe in the future, but I'd already captured it at that point in time, so if I lied to you, it's just because I didn't want to spoil things. But again, it's just a fun fighting game. You'll see that fall recovery right there. If you push the button at the right time, you will pop back up quicker from that fall, even though it was technically a jump backwards, so I'm not sure. It seems to be a little bit of a coding error. But you'll see there I was able to get a 3-hit combo in, and everything felt relatively well. But I will say that once you get past a certain stage in this game, the stage here, the difficulty spikes hard, and there is a test menu, but unfortunately no matter what difficulty you set the game to, it doesn't seem to change anything. It seems like it's locked to one difficulty, and that test menu either is inoperable or there's some sort of bug in the emulation. But I love here on the animation for our death, she just takes a dive. She's standing there and basically just launches her face directly into the ground. So the animations are a bit janky, maybe they're unfinished, maybe that's just the best the developers could do. But yeah, that is 10th Degree. It's a prototype arcade game from Atari. They got at least to the testing stage because there are articles out there talking about them testing it on the show floors. It was cancelled, and probably for a decently good reason, because even had this been finished, I don't think what's here is good enough to compete against the likes of Street Fighter and Tekken. The characters have some decent looks to them, but it kind of almost feels like a paint-by-numbers Tekken / Street Fighter EX2 hybrid. If you ever played this game before, leave me a comment down below. I'd love to see what you think about it. And if you want to see more prototypes on imported playlists, leave me a comment as well. Share that out videos throughout the week, and we are done. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.